Okay, now we're recording. All right. So hello everybody, welcome to our next webinar. I'm going to share my screen in a second, talking about AI once more, but a different focus this time. Give me one second. Okay. All right. Can y'all see my screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, here we go. So this time, our webinar is focused on AI, like I said, but we're talking about academic integrity this time. Our other one, please feel free to check that out when you get some time, is focused on plagiarism and how do we kind of make sure that we avoid that while using different AI tools. This one is taking a little bit more of a big picture approach, but it's still relevant in terms of talking about using AI and the different things that are available to you as students, but making sure that we fall under working with academic integrity. So what I'll do is the first part, I'm sorry, my name's Carly Penn, with Online City College. Um, and I teach, work with our students for success coaching and things like that. So I will be presenting this from the perspective of both sides of that coin. And so knowing what it's like to teach courses and working with students in that capacity, as well as understanding what works for your success, and what's necessary for you to succeed as a student. So let me find my mouse. Okay. What I'll do is part one is going to all the slides with this little academic integrity title. It's part one. We're going to talk about that first and kind of break down what does that mean and how do we operate within that. And then part two is where I'll talk about strategies that we can work through. If you're interested, of course, this is optional in using different tools as you go through your coursework. So first thing I always like to start with, if you're taking my classes, I always provide definitions, key terms, and things like that to kind of just help explain vocabulary words or theories and stuff like that. So first thing, just to make sure we're all on the same page. I think we all have an idea of what this is, but to just make sure that we have a consistent understanding as we go through the rest of the slides. This is a really good definition that I came across. Read through a lot of different articles, looked at different websites to kind of pick around and decide what could work and what makes sense for understanding this term. And I'll start by saying there isn't really like a formal definition of academic integrity. If you look it up, like in Webster's or anything like that, it's not really a word that'll show. This one, integrity by itself, without academic in front of it, we all know that's in the dictionary, right? This one, both of them, academic integrity is not actually in there. So there's no solidified version that people specifically use, but there's different organizations, different universities, societal things that have their own versions of what that means. So this one I came across is from the European Network for Academic Integrity, and I think that it really provides a comprehensive look at what this is and what does that mean. So I did highlight different keywords. I always like to point those out just to help us understand what they're talking about. So let's take a look at this and then I'll get into some other aspects after that. So straight out the gate, first word here is compliance, and that is important. Compliance, and the reason I'm pointing that out is because when you're thinking about how do I operate with academic integrity as a student, compliance is the first part of that. You have to want to do it. It's a choice that we make as individuals, as adults, and things like that. It's something that you comply with by choice, and it's because you desire to, as a part of the community, as a student, with your own personal values that you hold, that you've grown up with, and things like that. So, out of the gate, compliance really is the first important word. But the rest of it is compliance with what? Ethical and professional principles, standards, and practices. So they did kind of, it's really two definitions inside of one. That's the first part, is you're complying with these things, these principles and standards and practices. And I also like this part. I highlighted system of values. It really is academic integrity because there's no formal singular definition of this phenomenon, if you want to call it that. It really is a system of values that we hold and that we operate in. And they serve as guidance for making decisions and taking action in education, research, scholarship, the whole nine. So basically in academia is what that comes down to. And so I just really liked, as again, I highlighted those particular words for this definition just to give you some insight as to what does that mean. If you try to look it up, there's a bunch of different things that'll come up, different resources. But this is a good comprehensive look at what do you even mean by academic integrity, ethics, system of values, and it helps you to make decisions as a student, right? And this goes for professors and administrators too. All right, so now I want to talk about what does this represent? So we have a working definition, right? Okay, so what does it actually represent? I think this helps to provide more context to the definition. So there's three things, three major things here. Could be a few more that go with it, but these are the top three that I would say. They're not necessarily like in order on this on the screen, but they do all work together. So the first thing is qualifications. When you're thinking about what does it represent, why is this something that universities kind of focus on and stuff like that? One aspect is qualifications. So it says here the value of qualifications that are offered by an institute or a university, in other words. And that's directly tied to you as a student, believe it or not. Your qualification, whether you're here for a certificate, an associate's, a bachelor's, a graduate degree, it doesn't matter which one you're going after. You being enrolled as a student here at Loyola, one of your major goals, of course, is to obtain your qualification or your degree, right? Even if it's a certificate. The value of that qualification here at Loyola, of course, you all know this, you applied here for multiple reasons, one of which may have been because we do have a positive, strong reputation. And it's been around for quite some time. This is a pretty old university in a good way. So the qualifications of what's offered here and other universities and stuff, that is based on academic integrity, right? It's based out of that. If you think about it, and then I'll go to this next part, if this university, and never would be the case, but just as an example, if we did not abide with integrity in academia, just switching the word around, if we didn't do things a certain way, if we didn't have certain bylaws and things that we operate from and code of conduct and all of that, the degree that you get from this university that you have a goal to use in the workplace or in business or what have you wouldn't really mean very much, would it? So this is one aspect of it. And I'll point out why I'm saying all this at the end of it. This is the next part. Number two is integrity. So what is that? We know this word, but still to put the definition, honesty, trust, and ethical conduct of the students. So that's where you come in as a student. This part here is more big picture, the institute. Still involves the students, but this is integrity. It represents you as a student operating with honesty, trust, and ethical conduct. And then this is the last part. Responsibility kind of ties both of those things together, as well as honestly, it's not on the screen, but the behavior of professors and the way that they structure their courses and the way that they operate with grading and communication and all that kind of stuff. They're also involved, administrative people too, but responsibility is the last part of this three major things. So academic institutions, management of those factors up here in both of these areas. So the way that, again, Loyola, the way that we handle responsibility for you all as students and the way that we operate as a university in all the different capacities, all of those tie together with academic integrity. It represents us acting with integrity so that this, especially number one, is something that you're able to find value in and you're able to benefit from. So those things all tie together. Um, this is always the main question that I definitely like to address. Why does this even matter? If you take in my class, this is always the proponent of trying to understand when you're going through coursework and stuff like that. What does this have to do with me? Why does it matter? This is where it comes in. So, in my reading while I was preparing this presentation and stuff, I came across a really good article from Australian Centre for Student Equity and Success. And they had, this is close to the beginning, it was right at the beginning of the article. I was looking through it, and they had a really good quote that I put here on the screen. The reason I put this, I'll go through it in a second, is when I think about the question, why does this even matter? Why is this a topic of conversation that you may hear sometimes? Schools may even have courses related to or trainings related to academic integrity. This is, I think, a good example or a piece that kind of explains why this is important. So, what they said here is the primary value of higher education lies in human connection, critical dialogue, and the development of wisdom and expert professional judgment. I wanted to highlight the keywords, but there's too many, so I would end up highlighting the whole thing. But um, this is providing some insight as to when you think about the reason why you're enrolled in school, yes, it is to build your credentials and, hopefully to get a promotion at work or to enter a new field or something like that related to finances. Those are all common reasons, right? And perfectly fine reasons. But another one is these are some really they're not really tangible, but they still matter in terms of the value that you get from being a student no matter what level that you're at. Human connection, right? Those are important. Even as an online student, it's still very important. It's something that you benefit from years down the road. Critical dialogue, developing wisdom, developing knowledge and skills. Those are things that you get from being a student, right? That's some of, I thought this was a nice way for them to kind of pinpoint. There's many different values, but those are some important ones that make a difference in your experience as a student. Um, this is where it ties into academic integrity. Attempting to develop those things that you typically will receive as you go through a program, it becomes almost pointless if you and those around you don't operate with academic integrity, right? It becomes a waste of time to even, I mean, go through a program, to be quite honest. If integrity is not something that's implemented every time you take a class, every time you work on an assignment, every time you communicate with somebody, all of that type of stuff, it becomes honestly kind of like a waste of time. Not to put anything harshly or something like that, but that's what happens. And it also voids the benefits that you get from these things over here. The connections, the dialogue, learning, the skills that you develop, all of that. If it's not done with integrity and done incorrectly or improperly, you don't really get the benefit of those things. And you can face some serious consequences if you don't operate with the integrity. So, just to point out pretty quickly, why does all this even matter in the first place? It kind of lends to those things. All right. We're almost finished with part one, and then I'll get into the strategies. So, next question. You told me the definition. I know why it's important now. Okay, so how do I do it? Is always the next question that comes up, right? When you're learning something. How do I apply this to my life? There's three things that you can focus on as a student. And these are simple. This slide does not have a bunch of text on it intentionally because this is a very straightforward process, right? And not really something that I need to teach, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it's really straightforward. Three things: ethics, honesty, and avoid plagiarism. There's more there. We can go into the nuances of it, but there's really no need. It's as simple as this. Ethics, as a student, operate with moral and ethical standards. A lot of that comes from you first as a person, and then your university, Loyola, we have quite a few documents on our website that kind of explain from the university perspective, how do we maintain ethical behavior? You can read those and learn about it and connect your personal ethics to the university's ethics. and boom, you can figure out how do I operate with these things, right? Honesty, very straightforward. Be honest in your work, right? When you're writing a paper, doing a presentation, what have you, be honest in the work that you're presenting, right? You're here to learn. It doesn't have to be perfect. You will get feedback and stuff like that, and you can perfect yourself over time. But be honest with your work, and then avoid plagiarism. Point blank, period. Um, Again, we covered this in the fall, one of the fall webinars. So if you want to learn more about that, please feel free to watch it. But that's another big one. And the reason why we're connecting it with academic integrity, plagiarism, acknowledge other people's work, right? That's a big, big part of academic integrity. All right. So this is the last part of part one, and then I will get to our strategies. So the next thing to do, we answered those major, major questions. What is it? Why does it matter? And how do I do it? Like, how do I apply this to my life? Really, the part two is how do I apply it, but some basic stuff. Okay, now I will start to make the connection from academic integrity to AI and how do we use AI. So I made this slide very slow on purpose because this is probably the most important part of everything that's presented in here, even more important than the strategies. This sentence right here is probably, I would say, the most valuable one in this whole presentation. Let's relate all of this to AI usage. The thing that I want you, before I cover any strategies, the thing that I want you to have at the forefront of your mind is that these tools that I will, and strategies that I'll cover, first and foremost, you have to think of them and use them as educational aids, right? They're meant to help you. That's the key word here, and why I put it in bold. They're only meant to help, not complete, okay? They're not a replacement for your thinking and your creativity and all that kind of stuff. They're not a replacement for your effort as a student. They should not be doing your assignments for you, should not be writing papers for you, and stuff like that. That's work that you do as a student and building your skills and building your knowledge and earning your degree in an ethical manner, right? But the AI tools that exist nowadays, they can be used to help you as aids, right? That's the perspective that we're working from in this webinar and in this university, okay? So, again, the AI tools like ChatGPT that many, many people like to use, they should be used to enhance your learning, your creativity, your productivity as a student, and outside of school as well. You can use it for work stuff too. But that's the key part right here and the most important. So please take that in, absorb it, um, pause it here if you need to. But this, they should be used to help. They're not meant to complete the work for you. So putting that forward and making sure that we're all on the same page, knowing that these are just assisting you with certain aspects of your schoolwork, I'll talk about different strategies. So we have four different strategies that you can use these different AI tools. So I will cover these, and at the end, I'll try to show you a couple of them. I'm not gonna like go through the whole thing because I don't have enough time, but I'll try to show you a couple things. All right. So the strategies. Here's the first one. Idea creation. If you're asking the question now, okay, I understand all that stuff about academic integrity. How can I use these tools in my coursework? This is one of them. Idea creation. AI is really helpful for helping you to brainstorm. If you need to, well, I'll cover that example, but if you need to come up with some things for a project or something, it's really, really helpful in if you're stuck, if you're trying to think of something that you want to focus on for an assignment and it's not coming to mind, you're tired, what have you. It can help with this, right? It's not going to write your project for you, but you can brainstorm with AI. So here's an example. I'm going to try to share examples with all of these to help you kind of see how to do it. Here's the first one. Let's say you're taking a history class and it's focused on the industrial era, machines and factories and all that kind of stuff. Let's just say that's the topic of this history class. and your professor gave you an assignment where you have to create a podcast episode. Like you have to develop it, like write out the script and all of that, and then you have to record it yourself. I've done that with some of my students, which is why I put that as an example. Okay. If you are struggling to come up with some ideas on what could I focus the podcast on? Because podcasts, especially I watch and listen to a lot of them, almost every single day, and there's tons of different topics. There's lots of different categories that they fall into. So you can talk about many different things. Some of them are very specific, some of them are a little more general in nature. If you're struggling to think of an idea for this assignment, you could use an AI tool to help you brainstorm. So you could use Gemini or ChatGPT. Those are the two main ones that I'll talk about, just because they're able to do quite a bit. But you can type in as a prompt. I'm not gonna show the prompts on here, but you could type in as a prompt, hey, I've got to create a podcast for class. This is my, topic area. What ideas could I put in here? And it can help you, I should say, to come up with some ideas that are suitable for the time period for that history class and help you pinpoint ideas that work with the typical structure of a podcast. They can differ depending on the creator, the developer, but there is usually a format that podcasts follow. So the AI tool can help you come up with an idea that fits within both of those parameters. And then taking it a little bit further, a step further, um, if you finally identify an idea and you're going back and forth with the tool to pinpoint what you want to focus on for that podcast, then you can think about a little deeper what you want to do and say, okay, a lot of them have guests, right? Different podcasts on certain episodes, they'll feature, an author, an artist, or whoever on the podcast. If you want to do that for your assignment, you could ask the tool, hey, if this is my focus for this industrial history class, what's like a prominent figure or something or somebody who could be like a guest that I would interview on this podcast? And then what could we talk about? Like what kind of questions could I ask him or her that are relevant to the time period and to their profession or whatever that looks like. That's just an example of what you could do. It's just to help you brainstorm, right? If you're having problems getting started with that process, you can use an AI tool. Here's another one. This is probably my favorite way to use it. Sometimes the brainstorming comes really easily, sometimes it doesn't, so that's a good one. But here's another strategy. Information breakdown. So if you are, well, I'll start with this part. I'll share, I have two examples that I'll share on this. Information breakdown. These tools, of course, again, ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whoever you want to use, they can break down complex concepts pretty well, especially now that we have more advanced iterations of these tools compared to when they were first developed or released back in 2022. They're really good at breaking down complex concepts. So they can provide topic relevant examples. Excuse me. And they can summarize text for you. So let's look at an example. Let's say you're looking at a theory that you've just learned about. It could be, again, a history class, or it could be something else, a business course, and you're reading through your textbook or watching a video, and you don't quite understand still what it's saying. Type something into an AI tool. It can give you some more detailed information about that theory just to help you understand what is it talking about. Okay. So don't feel, again, these are meant to help. So you don't have to feel stuck if you're coming across something that I've never heard this before, I've never seen this before. What does this mean? It can provide just some additional information that's really, really helpful for understanding that thing. Example two, let's say, and this is something in my class, I don't have an example, but let's say, excuse me, you are trying to read through like a peer-reviewed article and you're going through maybe the methods section, which is typically pretty complex because they put different numbers in there, they put different strategies of how they did the study, they put a lot of stuff in there. You don't always have to understand the nuances of that section, but you can sometimes, based on the professor, they may want you to actually go through and talk about what happened in the methods section, but they're usually pretty complex. If you're having trouble understanding that, you can use the tools to summarize those sections. Not to write something for you necessarily or anything like that, but it can summarize different pieces and kind of give you a more comprehensive explanation of what is being done in that section. So that just makes it easier to understand. And so it's a good way to kind of get a big picture view of what's being written, what's being said, without getting stuck in the details of what are they saying. Okay. This one is also a pretty interesting one. It varies, and so I've put some information here that I'll cover in a second. But usable outputs. What this is talking about is it can, so the first two we're covering more information based. This one here is based more on outputs that the tool can provide for you in terms of these right here. So this list is the type of outputs if you wanted, and this is going to vary based on your class, but if you were looking to actually create something with the tools, they're able to do that. And so, excuse me, these are some of the things, just a few, but these are the main ones that I think are most important if you need to use it for a project or something like that. Infographics, images, different diagrams, maps, maybe if you need it for a particular class, guides and critiques. So they can help you actually to create these things for your classes. What I will say, and it'll not print it out, but it'll produce it for you. What I will say is they only should be used if the professor has given you permission to do that. Um, it usually will be in the syllabus or they'll probably tell you themselves. But if the professor allows AI to be used in the course, then you're good. And feel free to kind of experiment or ask them, set up a meeting with the professor and ask them, hey, for this project, I was thinking about creating, a diagram or a chart or something like that with AI. Can I do that? Get the go ahead and then feel free to play around with it. But just make sure you know if it's usable or not, because they can dictate if they want to use it or if they don't. And you'd have to abide by that. So here's an example of what you can do. And this one's pretty straightforward. Let's say that you're a person, we know about learning styles and things like that. If you're somebody who is more of a visual learner and you like to see something represented like a concept or a theory, a framework, or what have you, you can ask ChatGPT to create like a flow chart if that's something that helps you to see the connections between this term and that term, or that theory versus this one, or cover different time periods within a course. You can ask ChatGPT to kind of create a flow chart for you based on that insight, and it'll produce that so you don't have to do it yourself. And so that's a really good way to, if you need these types of things, they can produce it. Just be mindful, and I put it up here. You do need to give credit to the tool. So I would just be sure, and there's different ways to do that. I can share some resources on our page, on our resources page. But if you're going to do any of these with the AI tools, you have to give credit to the tool and make sure you're sharing that you use these to create those things, okay? Because I mean, that's how it works. And that goes into plagiarism and stuff like that. But just wanted to share that to be sure. Okay. And this is the last one, so we're coming to the end of the presentation. And then I'm going to show you a couple of ways that this one works. This is the last strategy. So You can do the outputs, you can do brainstorming and all that kind of stuff. This is something else. It may not be for every course that you would need this, but if you're writing a paper and stuff like that, it's a really good writing cleanup tool. AI. I mean, you could use, I guess, ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or something, but there's other specific ones that I'll show you in a second that are actually created just for writing help. Because it is complicated sometimes, especially as you go from bachelor's to graduate and things like that. The expectations are higher. So these are just some of the things that they can do. So Gen AI, I just use that term as a general thing for the different types. They can assist with writing tasks, so they can pinpoint different grammar corrections. If you're writing, you're going through, and you feel like you need to strengthen your grammar and solidify that a little bit more, they have tools that'll point those things out for you and show you how to correct the grammar if it's something wrong with it. This is another one. There are certain tools that if you've written like your draft of your paper before you turn it in and you're working through, you've got, the main ideas, you've got the structure for the most part, and you have a draft, some of these tools can give you feedback on that draft. Of course, with using all of these, still implement the professor and your classmates, even if sometimes you're able to. I would still ask your professor. So I'm not saying just use the tool and ignore the professor for the course. That wouldn't be helpful. Use these as an aid and share with them that you're using it. But the tools can provide certain feedback that maybe your professor may not particularly have, or things like that. Just something that helps. The more feedback, the better. And then this is the last one. So there's some that are more specific. They can help you with citation support. It's not the most interesting thing, to have to focus on with writing, but it's important. Different citations, whether it's APA or MLA or whichever one that you have to use, it can help with that just to make sure that you do it correctly. And then storytelling. If you have maybe like a creative writing class or something like that, or a history class where you have to create something that's just a little more nuanced or different than a typical paper, and you need to really focus on storytelling and how to do that properly, they have tools that can assist with that part. So what I will do is I'm going to show you a couple that are pretty good that are you actually probably have seen these, but let me move this. This one probably Grammarly is the one that most people have heard of or used at this point, and it's very popular and it's pretty good. I think I've used it once or twice, but it they have a number of things that they'll do. I'm just showing kind of like the homepage so you can see what it looks like and what the website is. But this one helps a lot with the grammar, and it's all AI. This is one of the AI tools that you can use. And so they'll explain, what they do and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to show one example to give you like of course, we want like a list. I don't have a full list of different tools, but they do a very good job of using grammar corrections in your writing. One thing that I will point out, though, I've run into this with some students in the past at a different institution. They Grammarly has a tool, their tool, I should say. The way that it's formatted, one of the ways is it can kind of be on your computer screen while you're writing your paper or your presentation or whatever. And there's a particular correction feature that can automatically turn on or you can turn it off. I don't recall the name of it off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But I would just be mindful, I will say this. All that to say, I would be mindful in how you use it or how much you use it, and that's for all of the tools, not just the writing stuff. But be mindful of how you use it because it's always helpful and good practice to double check things. I know that means more time and more effort, but double check what it gives you, the way that it works. If there's an automatic setting where it will kind of write something for you, I would I would approach that with caution is how I'll phrase it. Because I just wouldn't want you all to get flagged for plagiarism or anything like that. I've seen some issues in the past before. This is still a great tool, but just be mindful of that and double check whatever it's giving you. Whatever it says is proper and stuff. There's ways to check for it and ask a professor. This is why I said still incorporate your professor. But I just wanted to, throw that out there because I've seen that issue before. And then this is another one. So this is called Jenny AI. This one's pretty awesome. So this goes beyond just the grammar stuff. This is a more comprehensive writing tool. And so this is a it's a lot going on right there, but this is a screenshot that they have of what it looks like if you're using Jenny AI. So in a nutshell, it helps with quite a few different things. So citations, like I was mentioning earlier, and this is just within this one. I wouldn't do this one. I'll come back to that in a second. Agentic AI chat about summarizing papers. You can bring your files in and it can kind of look through and summarize and whatnot. But it helps with the writing process and bringing forward your research. Like most of your professors are going to say, hey, for this paper, you need 3 resources or 4 resources or something. When you find them, your articles, this is an awesome tool to kind of keep those in one place and pull from the articles in the way that you need to. When you're paraphrasing, quoting, and what have you, it's just a nice AI tool can help summarize some of those articles that may be a little complicated and hard to understand. Um, I think it's really helpful. I'll come back down. What I was saying with this part, um, autocomplete. Again, I would be very mindful of that. Approach that with caution as well, because I don't want any of you all to inappropriately get flagged for something like plagiarism. It's there, but doesn't mean you have to use that part of the tool. So, but the rest of it is pretty handy, pretty neat. That's just a couple of examples. And again, hey, it's free. They may have some other stuff that you have to pay for, but um, those are just some of the things that I wanted to point out. I will also, on our resources page, share a list of some other things that could be beneficial for you all in terms of resources and tools that are AI powered that can assist you without doing the work for you. Because again, that's what we're trying to avoid with all of this. These are just meant to help you with certain processes. So, I hope that was helpful for you all. That was all that I have, and I'll stop sharing my screen right now. But yeah, if you have any questions or are confused or need a little bit more insight on something, please feel free to reach out to me, email me, or anything like that, and I'm more than happy to discuss more. But those are our strategies and discussion on academic integrity and how do we kind of connect those two things together. So, hope that was helpful for you and hope you all have a wonderful day.